Well, welcome back to the channel, guys. If you are new here, my name is Roger. I am designing and building a mid-engine supercar from scratch. This is the current state of the car, and in this week's video we're going to be making a mold and a carbon fiber part here for this driver's side quarter panel, or at least we're going to be attempting to. So take a look at the video. If you have any questions, ask them in the comment section below. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. So let's get started with this week's video. This is the mold for the passenger side. Basically just started cutting it. I have one piece of a 4-piece mold cut and brushed a coat of epoxy on it. So it is waiting on the remaining 3 pieces to be cut and attached to this or glued to it to complete the mold. As I'm using the Gorilla Glue and it's expanding foam so it bubbles up. To control that process, I bought some cinder blocks to use for weights to hold everything in position while this glue expands and dries. And I left this gluing all night last night, so I need to remove all of the weights and test and see that this weight process helped my problem I was having with void areas gluing the foam up. So I'll unpack this here shortly and check and see how that did. Hopefully this will help some with the process. And also yesterday I put the final coat of high build primer on this mold, which is the driver's side quarter panel. So there's about a full quart or close to a full quart of high build primer on here, which should be enough to work down and block sand, wet sand, and get this mold smooth enough to make a part on. Now there are some rough spots. You can see up close there's some bubbles, different places, some little dips. But there should be enough primer on this that I can block sand all of that out, or 90% of it out, get the bulk of it out, and then I can put some body filler putty on the remaining spots and get this mold ready to use. So it is Saturday morning. I'm going to work on this mold the rest of the weekend and get it polished up smooth, ready to use, and then next weekend we'll try to make a part on this. And if all goes well, we'll have our first quarter panel. And while I'm working on this, I'm going to go ahead and keep cutting pieces for the next mold and try to get it to the point of being right behind this, get all the 4 pieces glued up and start working the mold down to get it smooth. So if we make a part on this one next weekend, then this one will follow either the following week or 2 weeks after, and see how that goes. But anyway, that brings you up to speed on where I'm at. Let me go ahead and get this weights off of this part, get it on the CNC and start cutting, and then I'll start block sanding, wet sanding this mold and see how smooth we can get it. Check back with you guys in a little bit. Okay, so the second part of the other mold, the mold that started laying over here, this is part 1 of it. Part 2 is on the CNC cutting. And this mold, we put a really heavy coat of high build primer on it 2 days ago. Used almost a full quart of primer. But that builds up nice and thick and allows me to block sand it down cleanly and get rid of any roughness in the pattern, any high or low spots. And I have block sanded it down with, I believe the paper I'm using is either 80 or 100 grit. I think it's 100 grit. And puttied the worst spots. You can see some of the little putty marks here of the high or the low spots that I filled in and went back over some. I need to finish those and then go ahead and start wet sanding this down 220 first and then 400. 400's as slick as I take it. And there's still a few little tiny spots in this mold that I didn't putty. They're really tiny and they're just almost non-existent. But what I found is after 6 coats of wax, those fill in and really almost disappear. And anything that's left here as a low spot will be a high spot in the gel coat. And the gel coat is thick enough that once the part comes off, it's easy to block sand it and work those high spots down smooth. It's much easier to do that than it is to try to fix everything in this mold. So that's what I do. I leave the smallest imperfections in the gel coat and just block sand it down. That makes it easier. But this is pretty slick. I mean, it's really nice. There's just a couple of little spots I need to work in, and then we'll be ready to start wet sanding, getting this ready to use. It is Sunday afternoon, and I'll have no problem getting this ready by next weekend to make a part. So next Saturday, hopefully, if all my ordered supplies come in on time, and I believe they will, we'll be making this part. So let me get busy wet sanding this. The wet sanding's not too time consuming, and I'll check back with you guys later. Okay, here is piece number 2 of the second mold we're making, and it just came off the CNC, and I have piece number 3 on the CNC, and it is cutting now. So I need to glue up a blank for the last piece, or part 4, piece 4 of this mold, and have it ready drying, so it'll be ready to put on the CNC when the other one comes off. And also I finished wet sanding this mold, and I got it as slick as I can. It's not perfect, but I think it's plenty close enough. Went ahead and taped around the perimeter of it where the tacky tape or gum tape or whatever you want to call it adheres to the mold when we do the vacuum infusion process. And I have put the first coat of wax on this mold, first of 6 coats. So I'll continue to wipe these off and put a new coat on until I have 6 good heavy coats on this, and then it'll be ready to make a part this coming weekend. After all 6 coats are on, we will do the gel coat on this Friday afternoon, late Friday afternoon, so it'll be dry and ready to make a part Saturday morning. But this part's looking pretty good, especially when you wax them. It makes a nice slick black finish on the mold, makes it look like it's coming along nicely. But just wanted to show you this, and let me get back to finishing up this third piece of the next mold we're working on. Okay, a quick update for you guys. I have all 6 coats of wax on this mold, and it is ready to spray the gel coat, hopefully tomorrow afternoon if I can get a break in the rain. They are calling for rain most of the day tomorrow, but right now it's looking like I'll get a window in the afternoon to put the gel coat on this so we can make a part Saturday morning. Tomorrow is Friday. And this part is looking pretty good. There's a couple of little tiny areas that should have been worked a little bit more, but it should make a good part. Don't have too many major concerns about it. I just hope the part turns out nice, because if not, it's probably going to destroy this mold and we'd have to start over again. And also on this mold, which is the passenger side quarter panel, it is finished except for there's 2 little small pieces that go here on the ends that are wrapping up on the CNC right now. So they'll be done here in a couple of hours, and we can glue them on, and this mold will be ready for a nice coat of epoxy and Q-cells. I need to brush all of that on and let it dry, and then we can start working on finishing this mold, which will take several days. But it's coming along nicely. I'm happy with it, and as soon as the part finishes up on the CNC, we'll attach it, and I will check back with you guys later once this mold is underway and working. I'm probably going to start cutting the next mold in line, which will be the driver's side door glass area between the A pillar and B pillar. But it's getting ahead of ourselves. Let's get one of these 2 molds finished first, which will be this one, and then if that part turns out nice, we'll start finishing this mold, and then we'll worry about cutting what's next in line on the CNC. But as it appears right now, everything's moving along nicely, and hopefully I'll have a good update for you guys here soon. Okay, it is early Saturday morning. We're out here in the garage. See my lawnmowers here. And the garage is getting full. I've got all kinds of stuff out here. A stack of foam over here in the back. Even though I've made 2 molds out of this stack, it's still several pieces left. So I feel sure that there's enough there to make at least the next 2 molds, if not more. I sprayed the gel coat on our mold yesterday. It rained all day, so I never got a chance to take it outside and spray it. I had to spray it here in the garage, which is why you see this corrugated paper here underneath it. I save those pieces so when I need to do something here in the garage, painting or gel coating, I can do it without getting a mess here in the floor. But I need to get all this stuff sorted out and organized, table cleaned off and everything, so I can start getting this part ready to make. We're going to, hopefully, if all goes well today, make a quarter panel. on the mold you see here. And in the background you can see the last two pieces here finished cutting for the mold that we have started in the basement for the other quarter panel. I'll remove these off the table later today and glue them onto our mold in the basement. But you can kind of see how they cut. These two pieces cut out of one big foam block, and I have them double-sided tape straight to the surface of the table. Okay, I have some big updates for you guys. We have a quarter panel, but it is horrible looking. Had two big issues when making this part, which ultimately led to the failure of making the part. Let's take a look at it first, and then I'll explain kind of what happened. I've got it setting up here close to where it sits. It's not in the exact position because I haven't trimmed the part out yet, and it's hitting the roll bar here. But you can see how wrinkled this part is and how bad some of the delamination is in the edges and corners from the gel coat. And the two problems that I ran into initially was I didn't have enough vacuum on the part. This was the first time using a mold made out of this new foam, or a large mold. I did make a little tiny part which was successful, but for some reason I wasn't getting full vacuum pressure on the mold. And this is closed cell foam, so I was kind of worried about this, but then again, since it's closed cell foam, it shouldn't bleed air anywhere, and the fact that there is an epoxy resin layer on the entire surface plus gel coat and everything, I wouldn't have thought there would have been a leak anywhere, but there was a leak somewhere. It wasn't in the vacuum bagging tape. Went all around the perimeter of that and sealed it up good. Couldn't find any leaks, but it was obviously leaking somewhere. I didn't have quite enough pressure, but the vacuum pressure was high enough that I had used that amount before and made successful parts. I just know that the resin moves slow. So I went ahead and attempted it because I had the part laid up in the mold. Either way, I was going to ruin all the materials and possibly the mold, even if I started over and tried to fix the problem. So I rolled the dice, went ahead and did the resin infusion process. And knowing that usually when the pressure is that close to being enough, once the resin starts infusing the part and starts working its way up, once it hits the place where the leak is and fills in, the vacuum pressure or suction, whichever way you want to look at it, rises to the point that it needs to be to make a successful part. So I rolled the dice, did the part, and that did happen. Once the epoxy got up to the place where the leak was, the vacuum pressure increased to enough to make a successful part, and the part did fully infuse. So I felt good about the fact that we were going to have a successful part, and went ahead, and once the part had fully saturated or infused, I closed the doors, turned the heat on in my heat box, and set the timer for 2 hours. I run it the first 2 hours with vacuum on, and then I turn the vacuum off and bake the part for 4 more hours in the heat. So after the first 2 hours, I went out and opened the box and checked it to turn the vacuum off, which I always open the box and peek in to see what the part looks like. And I noticed that the bag around the perimeter, the vacuum bag, had pulled loose in one corner. The tape had released for some reason. I've never seen it do that before, but it had created a vacuum leak, a huge leak. And the vacuum bag wasn't pushing down against the part like it should have been. And that's where all of these bubbles come from, with there being no vacuum pressure holding the cloth up against the mold. It was just free to sit and lag wherever it wanted to. And that's why this part looks horrible. But after the 2 hours, the resin had set up enough to where there was no way to salvage the part, and all I could do was just continue baking it, knowing that the part was probably going to be a failure. And when I pulled the part out last night out of the mold, I saw how bad it really was. And you can see there's some delamination. There's all this bubbling, unsmooth area. This is just primer stuck to the mold. This will pop right off. That's not a problem to get off. So that wouldn't have been an issue. But all of the edges look bad. All of the surfaces look bad. But I'm going to go ahead and trim this part out and set it up here. Since we have a part, the perimeter shape should be really close. I want to make sure it aligns with the rear of the car here. All these surfaces mate and look like they should, and up this edge here with the hatch, around the fender well opening. I just want to verify that all of that looks correct before we take the time to make another mold and see something in the part that comes out of the second mold that we should have corrected. Well, here's the part on the car. It's not sitting in the exact location that it needs to be, but it is close. It needs to move forward just a little and maybe even raise off the ground just a hair, but it's close in height. I have almost an inch of clearance over the tire, which is what I was expecting. I can't move it any farther forward because the clamp I'm using to hold the parts together is hitting the tire, and if I take the clamp off, the part gets way out of alignment. So that's why it's sitting where it's at. But I wanted to show you what this looked like. With this clamp together, you can see that the alignment here is pretty close. There's a tiny little gap here because it's bumping there. I could file bore away and get that closer, but it's close enough to show me what I need to do. This gap's pretty consistent except right here where it's touching, so that should align and fit really nice. Now the trunk is not aligned because honestly I think the entire rear and fender need to move forward, or quarter panel, not fender. But I think this assembly needs to move forward, and I think the hatch and the roof need to move backwards. That'll close in this gap. But other than that, you can kind of see, let's see if I can get down here and show this a little bit closer. You can see the gap is a little bit less than back here, showing it needs to move forward. And there's almost an inch of clearance here, and that'll increase just slightly when this comes forward. So if that does go up any, it wouldn't be much more than a quarter or 3/8 of an inch or so. And the hatch is raised so I could get this quarter panel up underneath it where it needed to sit. And it's sitting on blocks here in the front and in the back to keep everything level. That's as close as I could get to it. But you can see this uneven surface here really well in the light. Looks terrible. Really broke my heart when this piece failed, but I am kind of happy to see it on the car and see how it aligns and fits. It looks like it's nice. I'll know the exact location front to back where this needs to go when this part here is made for the door glass frame. Once that is put in and installed, there's a notch here to align this, and then this curve will align. That'll position this piece perfectly with the roof of the car, and then this will glue to that assembly, and that'll help align this front to back, and I know exactly when it's correct. Then I can start worrying about the hatch and all that other stuff, but that's way in the future. We have, before I start doing that, we have at least 4 more parts to make, and maybe even 6, because there's a section here that goes up to the door that I may need. But I wanted to show you what this looks like. It's kind of exciting to see the shape of the car. Would have been a lot nicer if this part had have turned out good. It felt like we really made a lot of accomplishment in this video, but we'll move on to the next part. I have the glue drying for the quarter panel, for the passenger's quarter panel, and we'll start working on finishing that this afternoon. I'll brush a coat of epoxy and Q-cells on it and start working it in. It'll take me probably 2 weeks to get it completely ready to use, and see if I can do a better job on that part. I wasn't expecting a failure on this, but that's what happens when you build your own car, I guess. You live and learn, and hopefully you learn from your mistakes, and we'll see how it goes. Well, I found something interesting yesterday. I was out in the garage working, and I was looking at the pieces of the mold that we just used for this quarter panel that looked horrible. And I originally thought that the ripples in the part was from losing vacuum, and it's possible some of them are, but I also noticed that the mold has the same ripples in it. The foam, for some reason, blistered up and shrunk. You can see some of the blisters here. This is This is primer. So these sheets of primer turned loose. Some because of the blistering on the foam, which you can see all up through here. It's terrible, but it matches the blisters in the part. I thought it came from a lack of vacuum holding the part down against the mold, but it looks like the heat in my oven got the mold too hot and blistered the foam, causing all of these areas. And it's not just the primer released from the foam, it's in the foam too. I mean, you can see the blistering here in the foam, and here where I removed this piece of primer, it's really wrinkled and blistered looking, and I mean everywhere. So I talked to a few people about this, asking questions. I posted a question on a Facebook users group called Carbon Fiber Fabricators. I got quite a bit of feedback. I spoke to Jay Jarvie of the Builder Creator YouTube channel and asked him about this. He said he has used this type of foam to make mini molds, but he's never used heat, like an oven, to cure the mold. So I did some research on the foam. The foam says it is good up to 160 degrees, and my oven only reaches 135 degrees. So initially I thought that wouldn't be a problem, but it's possible that the buildup of heat in the oven combined with the heat coming from the epoxy curing may have exceeded the safe limit on what the foam can withstand. But either way, the foam mold looks horrible. It is in bad shape. So I have an issue. I got quite a bit of feedback on the Facebook users group from different people, and lots of people were very helpful. You know, you always get some people that's telling me that I'm doing absolutely everything incorrectly, and maybe I am. But if other people have had success with the foam, and they have, then it tells me that the issue is something else. So it's either a combination of some of the primers or chemicals I'm using, or it's the heat, and most likely it's the heat in the oven. And I want to thank a couple people on, well, one in particular on the Facebook user group, the Carbon Fiber Fabricators. There's a guy on there that I know he watches my YouTube channel, and he's always giving helpful feedback when I ask questions. And his name is Alex Bertrand. So I really appreciate you watching the channel and giving me good feedback to the questions that I ask. But so moving forward, what I'm going to try is I'm going to try this foam one more mold, and I'm going to do it without using the heat in the oven. The heat does two things. The heat in the oven here cures the part faster. It takes it from a 12-hour cure time down to 6 hours, and it also brings the part, the carbon fiber part, or the resin, the epoxy, to its maximum strength. So if you don't bake it in the oven, it's not quite as strong a part. It's not a huge difference. And you can always remove the part from the mold here, and then after it's out of the mold, cure it in the oven for a few hours at temperature to make it reach its potential or maximum potential. And I may do that also. But first thing I'm going to do is do some experimenting and with some epoxies on the foam. I'm going to make sure that my resin that I'm using on my carbon fiber parts doesn't have a cure temperature high enough to melt the foam. That'll be my first test. And if it passes, then I'm going to make another part, which will be the passenger side quarter panel, the one we have started in the basement. And we will try it with the same exact vacuum infusion process, but no heat. I'll leave the oven off and just let it cure for 12 hours and see what happens. If we pass, I'll know what to do going forward. And if we fail, I'll have to try something different, maybe even abandon the foam for the molds. I don't know quite yet. But anyway, if that brings you guys up to speed, let me get back to working on this other mold and have a lot of sanding to do on it. Okay, so I mentioned I was going to do a test piece on this foam without putting it in the heat and just verify that everything would work correctly before I made another part on a mold and ruined everything. But here's what I've decided to do. I'm taking this piece of foam, and I have brushed a coat of epoxy and Q-cells on it like I would normally do to a mold to basically block the foam surface from anything primer-wise or body filler or anything that attacks the foam. So this coat of epoxy creates a barrier so nothing attacks the foam and ruins it. And let this dry overnight. I have 2 coats of wax on it so far. I'm probably going to put 1 or 2 more. And then I'm going to make a sample part with the epoxy resin that I use for my vacuum infusion process. It's a different epoxy. I just want to test both epoxies. This one doesn't attack the foam at all. The other one, it's possible it could if it has a hotter temperature as it is curing or activating. But just to confirm that, I will take that epoxy and maybe a piece of fiberglass or a piece of carbon fiber cloth or something, and just do a small layup here in the center, just a small square, and let that cure overnight, and just to verify that it doesn't get too hot or nothing happens to attack or melt the foam. And if this test is successful, I will go ahead and try to make another part in a mold and not use my heat box, and see if that is successful. Right now I'm thinking the heat box plus the temperature of the epoxy curing both combined exceeded the limits of the foam and just distorted or warped it. But wanted to do a small test just to have some kind of a peace of mind moving forward to make another one, and this is my test. But I will try this. Should finish this up today and get a piece laminating and drying tonight, so I can see if this is successful or not. And on top of that, working on the next mold, which is the passenger side quarter panel, and I have sanded this. It is coated with a coat of epoxy Q-Cells, and I've sanded it down. I've put Bondo in the worst spots and sanded it down close, and then I've done squeegeed some body putty on here in the worst spots, and I'll sand this down. This area here is good enough for a coat of primer, and once I sand over this one more time, it'll be ready for a coat of primer. I just need to finish this corner up here, and then this half of the mold will be ready. I can flip it over where I can reach the other half and work on that for 2 or 3 days, and it should be ready for a coat of high build primer and then block sanding. So maybe another week's work on this, week and a half, and I'll have it ready to try to make a part on, unless my test piece over here fails for some reason tonight. If that's the case, then I won't move forward with this at all. I'd have to switch back to some other material besides the foam. But I am thinking that test will be successful, and we can go ahead and make a part on this mold once it's finished. But we will know here tomorrow, and I guess that's going to be about it for this week's video, and I'll see you guys again in a few weeks.